Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I always got a lot of interest in my SHTF scenario videos that I do, and what they are is they're basically just short dramatizations that I do that bring up different topics that relate to preparedness and what things would look like if these certain bad events would happen. And as I've done these videos for a long time, I get a lot of people that will throw in the comments or they'll message me and they'll ask me to elaborate on other scenarios. And one of the main ones that I get a lot of people that ask me about is kind of the Red Dawn scenario, the invasion here in North America scenario. And there's a lot of moving parts to a scenario like that, and I do a lot of reading and I watch a lot of videos that discuss certain aspects of what an invasion would look like. So what I did is I did a short dramatization for you guys to check out. It's going to come after this clip right here, and then after that dramatization is over with, I'll have a little discussion back at my shop, and I'll discuss some of the key points and some of the things that I put in that particular dramatization that I think are pertinent if a invasion or Red Dawn scenario would happen here in North America. You guys stick around. It's been going on about 6 months or so. You know, they were talking about Taiwan getting invaded for years, and everybody thought that that was the end game, but that was just the beginning. Who thought that they would have attacked North America directly? They went for the ports on the west coast first, and there were a lot of infiltration units that came in from Canada and Mexico. Took down the ports first, and they used all the AM radio stations that apparently they purchased beforehand and had control of. They used those for relays so they could have a communications, I guess, infrastructure in place ahead of time. There's been so much disruption in the grid. The grid is in absolute shambles. We get about maybe 4 hours of grid power every other day, and we've been using that to do sort of the essential things like do laundry, and it's almost impossible to keep things frozen. Shelf-stable stuff is really the best bet. So when we do have a little bit of power, we try to can everything that we can so we get that squared away. We've got everything staged, jars and lids and everything. So whenever the power does come back on, we try to do as much as we possibly can in those times. For a little bit of light, when it's dark and stuff, we've been putting out the solar panels for things like this, you know, just little lights and little solar panels to charge all of our battery packs and stuff with solar, so we can still use our devices, and when we can get a signal or we can get a little bit of internet so we can see what's going on. All the information has just been curtailed. You can't really do much anything. The economy is completely and totally in shambles. We've been doing local work. They've been hauling a lot of grain and beans and stuff out of here, a lot of wheat, a lot of corn, a lot of black beans, small red beans, navy beans, that kind of thing. I've had work loading that stuff. They've been loading a lot of bags on rail cars, so you know, there's a lot of filling bags and sewing bags shut and packing that stuff in. Where all the stuff is going is you know, classified. They don't tell us where that stuff's going. A lot of the stuff we think is going to processing places, so that stuff can be processed and then put up in different areas. A lot of the bases, the large bases have come under attack, but they weren't so much like massive bombing attacks as they were drone attacks, and they've been attacks from these infiltration units. you really don't know who to trust. Everything is, if it weren't for being in a small community, you really wouldn't know who to trust. We don't trust outsiders at all now. In fact, there's checkpoints set up on both ends of town, and they're pretty much manned 24/7 by groups of volunteers. Work isn't really voluntary, though. Everybody has to work, whether they like it or not. Most people have been participating, which is sort of good. They do give us one day a week where we can do stuff at our places. I've been working basically like 12-hour shifts. They allow the wives to stay home to a certain extent unless they have special skills or special things that they know how to do to keep an eye on the places and stuff. We do have a little bit of a garden and whatnot. We've been bartering small time with our friends and our neighbors. My knowledge of medical plants and that kind of stuff has come in handy. We've used that to help a few people out, trade for a few things. Spare parts for anything mechanical are almost non-existent. Everything has been improvised, and if you need a part for something, you either got to improvise it, you got to manufacture it yourself, or you got to scavenge it. And we've kind of created a junkyard on the one area of town. Pretty much all the derelict equipment and stuff that we have, whether it's equipment or vehicles or appliances, parts, tools, whatever we got, anything that's broken down, we've been kind of taking it there. It used to be an old warehouse. We've been taking stuff there so people can kind of scavenge off of that stuff, because some people have been able to improvise and find some parts there to keep other things going. So our critical infrastructure has basically become a junkyard. Medicine is another thing that's just, it's terrible. We had so many people die in the first couple of months. People that were on dialysis, people that had cancer, people that had a lot of severe medical conditions, diabetes and stuff. They couldn't get the medication. We just had a mass die off of that stuff. And then some other people that have gotten sick with different things that could have been probably treatable, when everything was still good. They could have maybe helped them out, but we can't now. We were fortunate enough that this was a farming area. There was a lot of veterinary type medicine that was around that we could use. We just had to figure it out and do the math on that stuff to break that down into smaller amounts. That actually did save some lives. We were fortunate enough to have some RNs and one local doctor and a midwife that were all right around here. So we do have a certain amount of medical know-how, but they don't have the diagnostic stuff. The diagnostic stuff went back to the 1890s, because none of the technological stuff that they have, none of that works anymore. So we're just trying to make do, and how this is going to pan out, we don't know. We think that there's going to be a portion of what used to be the West Coast that's going to basically go to the Pacific powers from the looks of it. And but the economy, everything is in shambles, and we're just trying to live local and one day at a time, and hopefully some of us will get to the other end of this, but it's still yet to be determined. Hey guys, I hope you got some things to think about there in that little dramatization that I did on a invasion or Red Dawn scenario here in the United States. Now, first of all, I'd like to say that everything that I put in that particular dramatization came from either open source intelligence of articles that I read or videos that I seen on different topics covering this type of thing, or things that came from people who were actually in major SHTF events. particularly Venezuela and the former Yugoslavia. I have friends all over the globe that are kind of into preparedness, and we discuss these things. And I'm fortunate enough to have some friends that actually have been through actual SHTF scenarios. And I got a few notes here that I'm going to go off of, so I keep everything in order. And I'm going to discuss each one of these things individually that I had in this scenario. And the first thing is ports. You're not going to have a major invasion of North America unless you secure some ports. They're not going to take the United States, no matter how many tens of millions of people they have, unless they secure ports. And the most logical place to secure ports is on the West Coast. There's a lot of ports on the West Coast, and the West Coast has some advantages as far as it doesn't, it has, a lot of food that's grown there. There's a lot of activity on the West Coast. And because one of our major adversaries is a Pacific power, that West Coast would be a heck of a prize if that could be grabbed. So the ports are a major, major thing. And if you look into who owns the ports and the governmental interests that aren't ours that are in those ports, there's a lot of Pacific powers that are in those ports already. So they know the layouts, they know how things operate, and that's all important intelligence to a adversary. And another thing is Canada and Mexico. There's often been talk about infiltrators coming in from Canada and Mexico. And that's one thing that I actually snagged from the actual movie Red Dawn to plug into this scenario. When Lieutenant Colonel Tanner, he was the Air Force guy that was shot down in the first Red Dawn movie, and he's explaining to the Wolverines how the war started, because they didn't know. They were in an information blackout. There's more coming on that too. He said that infiltration units came up from Mexico and caused a hell of a lot of havoc. What's happening right now? It's not too hard to, to figure that actually taking place. So that was one thing in the actual Red Dawn movie that I feel that they got correct back in 1984. The AM radio stations. I read an article probably 5 years ago already where there was different Pacific nations that were purchasing AM radio stations on the west coast of the United States, and it was speculated at that point in time that those AM radio stations would be used for some type of military activity if there was some type of conflict on the west coast of America, because those AM radio stations could be used for different military applications because the hardware exists, because a lot of things would be jammed and there would be a lot of communication blackouts. And if adversaries could grab that communication infrastructure, they could use that to their advantage. Rolling blackouts is something I have talked to multiple people who were in actual SHTF events, whether they were conflict or whether they were natural events. Rolling blackouts are a thing. You might have electricity 4 hours a day. You might have electricity 6 hours a day. It might be in an off time. But that rolling blackouts seems to be a constant in a lot of SHTF situations, and I don't hear a lot of preppers talking about that rolling blackout type scenario where you have to get, your stuff canned or your laundry done or the basics of life. You have to compress that. You just can't, do a load of laundry when you go to bed at night. You might have to do that when the power is on. So now you have to wrap your life kind of around when you can get access to those critical infrastructures. No refrigeration is another one. No refrigeration, we have come to, our entire society revolves around refrigeration, whether it's, transporting food halfway across the country, or it's making, liquid fuel for, rockets and satellites that get shot up into space. That ability to make, to have refrigeration is a huge part of our society. And if there was rolling blackouts where you couldn't have constant refrigeration on stuff, what would the food infrastructure look like? It wouldn't look very good, not at all. Talk about solar lights. There has been different people that I talked to that small little solar lights kind of saved them, because when the sun goes down, everything gets dark. And if you don't have any light, you can't keep working. Part of the reason why it's a 24-hour society nowadays is because there is light. I can light up my shop and I can work till 3 a.m. out here if I want to, but if you don't have that light, it's going to be harder and harder to keep up that 24-hour cycle, and things will revert back to what they were before. Economic collapse, pretty much any situation where I talked to people firsthand, a firsthand SHTF, there was some type of economic collapse that took place. Some of them were worse than others, but there was always a collapse in the economy. Yet people still had to have people still had jobs. They still risked their lives basically to go to work in some of these conflict zones because they still needed to feed their family. And unfortunately, money is what makes the world go round. And people have to look at what would be, and that gets into skills then, what would be valuable in an economic collapse? What skills are people still going to want no matter, data entry might not be the thing, but being able to take care of something or fix something or, some type of medical thing, that might be more valuable than some of the skills that are considered high-paying jobs today. Information blackouts are another thing. There's going to be information blackouts no matter what happened. There was censorship during World War II. There's censorship that's going on right now because of the big tech platforms. There's things that they want you to know and things that they don't want you to know. And that always goes back to, how they control the information is how they control, the public thought or the public sentiment. So that information blackouts are almost a guaranteed no matter what the SHTF situation is, because they're going to want to steer public opinion however they want to steer it, more or less. Something that's come along particularly with the war in Eastern Europe has been drone warfare. I believe that warfare in the future is going to be more and more technological compared to what it's been in the past. And the war that's taking place right now is basically proof of that. Who to trust? That's another thing. The people that I talked to who were in the firsthand, SHTFs who witnessed this stuff, there is a period of time. So if you basically can't trust those people before SHTF happens, you're certainly not going to trust them after SHTF happens. And there are moving boundaries in trust. Some days you might have to trust these guys here because they have something you want. And then other times, people that you did trust, they're getting desperate, and that line of trust that moves back and forth. Some days you have to trust the shady characters, and other days you might not be able to trust the people that you trusted in the past because of the fluid nature of an SHTF scenario. Forced labor. This is another one. There was more or less forced labor during World War II. When things are really, really bad, they're going to force people to work. Able-bodied people are going to have to do something for whatever the effort may be, whether it's some type of natural disaster, whether it's filling sandbags, or it's, working in a factory to produce this or that some other power wants. That forced labor has been throughout history. When the Romans marched into a new village and they took it over, they grabbed a few slaves. That's forced labor. That's basically kind of how the whole thing works, but now it would be a more technological, you would scan into on your device, you would scan into your place of where you had to work that day to prove that you were there or whatever. So think of that forced labor, but now fold that into the technological world that we live in, and you can see kind of what that dystopian future would look like. Traditional roles is another thing that I have been told specifically that took place in major SHTF situations. And this isn't meant to be sexist or anything like that, but women would stay home, look after the home, look after whatever place that they had kind of secured, and the men would go out to protect and forage. Those traditional roles in these SHTF situations, and it didn't matter whether it took place in Yugoslavia or it took place in Venezuela, those traditional roles, people fell back into those traditional roles when SHTF happened. The men went out to try to secure resources and to forage or scavenge, and the women stayed home and kind of took care of the homestead. That is just how the human tribal mentality works, and how it flows into these different situations. Skills and spare parts, huge thing. Now, the one thing that I put into that scenario about, people created a junkyard where they could go scavenge parts and stuff out of, that actually was my own speculation on that. I didn't really read about that or hear that any other place, but that was my speculation, that if people had all this derelict stuff that they couldn't use, that would be congregated in a place, maybe managed by somebody, where people could use that stuff to either find parts or make parts to keep some semblance of the society that they had before. And basically just scavenging in general. If the place is all bombed out and tore apart, people are still going to risk their lives to go in there and grab what they think might be valuable. And the things that we think are valuable now are maybe not be valuable in the future. Anyway, I wanted to do this Red Dawn invasion type scenario video, and I wanted to talk about it because I've had so many people that asked me about this over the last probably year and a half or so. I wanted to touch base on some of the things that I think are possible if a invasion would take place here in the States. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. I hope you guys got a little information, a little entertainment here out of this little bit longer video, but I wanted to hit on all these key points and explain my mindset behind them. But anyway, you guys take care out there.